My name's Sophie Woodward and I'm a co-investigator on the airspace project. I'm also a professor of sociology. Interdisciplinary research is research that requires the participation of multiple disciplines within it, but it's research that takes place in between disciplines, in the space in between them. So quite often it will centre on a common challenge, whether this maybe is just a common substantive topic or a challenge. So for us, that's about how we understand air and inequalities around air and air pollution. But it's not research that goes beyond or leaves behind disciplines. It's one that requires the participation and the expertise and specialism of different disciplines. So this specialism can be methodological, or it can be theoretical, or it can be substantive. So, for example, I come from sociology, and in sociology, we have certain methodological expertise, for example, around creative or qualitative methods, and that's something that we can bring to the project. Whereas someone from atmospheric sciences would bring very different disciplinary expertise around air. So what we don't do, as I say, is leave disciplines behind. We are aware and we are conscious about our contribution of our disciplines. But I think centrally interdisciplinary, in taking place, as I've said, in this space between disciplines, it allows us to have dialogue. And I think dialogue is really central to this, whether this is verbal dialogue or written dialogue, where we can talk from our different perspectives around this topic. And I think in this dialogue, what interdisciplinary research is able to do is to develop new approaches. And I think that's really what the contribution that interdisciplinary research can make.
So my name is David Dobson. I'm a research associate working in the School of Health Sciences on this project, the Airspace project. This is an interdisciplinary project, which is an opportunity to explore differing epistemologies around air and atmospherics, and how to synthesize these ways of knowing in ways that help local communities who are organizing around various environmental concerns. We're working across all three faculties by including researchers from social, health, and atmospheric sciences to bring together knowledge that might be siloed within disciplines in order to help inform learning. In doing this, we're aiming to create a network of community-integrated researchers who can cohere around concerns in terms of health and social inequalities in the context of access to clean air, whilst exploring the various ways air and atmospherics are produced as rhetorical devices in political activism and policy discussions. We're additionally interested in spatial politics of air as a key factor in urban design, plus the social functions and meaning of air as part of home, community, and everyday life. The project is exploratory in nature and adopts what we're calling a street sociologies approach, with a view to developing a future large grant bid. There are two main streams of the work. Firstly, a scoping review to map out the various relevant fields of scholarship on air and atmospherics, guided by an advisory board of relevant experts and community activists. And secondly, some empirical work consisting of focus groups and urban walking interviews with local community groups, helping us to include their relevant concerns into the questions and research agendas for the proposed bid. The empirical work also helps us to explore creative ways of generating data by employing a sketch artist to further engage with some of the more intangible or hard to articulate aspects of residents' affective and embodied experiences of their local neighbourhoods.
So I'm Steve Hicks. I'm a senior lecturer in social work. I'm also the principal investigator for this airspace project. And I'm also the creativity, health and wellbeing lead for Creative Manchester. So just to say a few things, first of all, about how Creative Manchester can help you with an UMRI bid, if that's something that you're interested in. I would say, first of all, that we can help you with aspects of a project to do with helping you to organise or even host events, research cafes or webinars or seminars, or even bigger events, if that would be something that you would like to do. We can also help you to get together with or meet with colleagues across different faculties if that's something that you need some support or help with. Sometimes it's more difficult to make some of those links to begin with. That may be something Creative Manchester could help you with, to put you in touch with other researchers or other academics that we think would help you with the development of a research project. I think we can also offer you just advice on a research bid as well, if you wanted to talk through some aspects of your bid, or have someone from Creative Manchester have a look at parts of the bid or bits that you might be struggling with on a bid, then let us know and we can offer you that kind of support or that kind of advice as well. So look up our Creative Manchester website. You can find all the relevant staff on there, whether it's a research lead or the lead for Creative Manchester as a whole, or one of the comms officers. Just get in touch with us and we can get back to you and support you with your bid development in some way. Just to say a couple of other things in relation to developing an UMRI bid, though, I think. First of all, I think it's good to remember that these kind of projects, they run for 1 year only. So they are, or they can be, quite exploratory in some aspects, or some aspects of a project, as it were, can be exploratory. So that might be exploring some aspects of the topic itself, although you do want a quite defined kind of set of aims for any kind of bid you're putting in, obviously. But perhaps you want to explore links with other parts of the university in more detail or more depth as part of your project. Perhaps you want to develop further links with community groups or other partners as part of the project. So in that way, just to remember, I think there that the projects do have some exploratory aspects to them. In airspace, for example, we're also doing a scoping review as part of the project. So that gives us a chance to just look at some of the existing studies out there and to provide some kind of summary of what we know to date in relation to some aspects of thinking about air and atmosphere, for example. I think it's really important just to say with UMRI bids that they do need to be cross-faculty. I think that's something for you to think about if you're developing such a bid. And again, come and talk to Creative Manchester if that would help. It's a requirement of those bids. It's something that the panels are looking for. So you do need to think about how you can develop a bid that takes on board working across at least 2 of the faculties, if not all 3. And finally, I would say, I think it's also a really good idea to think about linking your bid to the University of Manchester's missions around social responsibility and also challenging inequality. That's really important to write that into the bid and think that through when you're putting a bid together. But I also think about what some of the benefits of your project might be for early career researchers. That's something that I think you will need to talk about. And also what the benefit might be to local communities or other partner organisations outside of the university itself. I think that's helpful as well.
So I've worked on a number of interdisciplinary projects, so this one, but also I've worked on other ones with material scientists, for example, in my research into clothing. And I think in general, I find interdisciplinary projects really exciting, but they're also kind of provocative in that they provoke me to think very differently and sometimes to change some of my assumptions that I have around a particular phenomenon or area that we're studying. I think what's really exciting about the airspace project is that because it's exploratory, we don't really know where we're going or what we're going to find out. And I think a lot of that is around the kind of engaging with and thinking about the different disciplinary perspectives. So this is my first time, for example, working with people from an atmospheric science background. I think there are obviously challenges with working interdisciplinary. So often different disciplines have different aims. We want different things from the research. So, for example, research I did previously with material scientists, what they were interested in was innovative materials, whereas I was interested in the mundane and the everyday. And so that becomes a bit of a challenge when you think you want very different kinds of outcomes from the research. But I think one of the ways to address and deal with that is to really kind of have challenge-based projects. And I think that's kind of what we're doing here. We're really thinking about the challenge of how do we understand inequalities around air pollution and how do we understand people's everyday atmospheres. And I think if we're challenge focused, it's much easier to start to negotiate some of those issues around working with interdisciplinary teams. But also, obviously, as I say, there are lots of positives as well in that it challenges a lot of your own assumptions coming for me from sociology, but also start to really critically reflect on how I do things. And I think what I enjoy as well about this project, we're at a relatively early stage, is thinking about what new ideas might come out of this. And actually, these are not just kind of sociological or atmospheric, they're ones that come together. And I think that's what's really exciting about it. And I think the kinds of discussions that we've had so far in this project are incredibly stimulating. And I think actually you can already see how much we're learning from each other. And the final point I'd like to make is that these kind of interdisciplinary projects are necessary. It's not possible to think about air inequalities as we are in this project without thinking about how polluted air is. So the kind of understanding from atmospheric scientists, we can't understand this without thinking about the everyday lives of people and how we live this kind of air inequalities. And so I think it really is necessary to do interdisciplinary research. It may be challenging, but it's necessary, but also I would say incredibly productive.
Okay, so coming from a qualitative social science background, it's been fascinating for me encountering the language and methodologies harnessed in atmospheric sciences and thinking about the very specific ways air is constructed as a social phenomena. Additionally, through building up relationships with various community groups, it's allowing me to engage with how this knowledge is adopted and operationalized by local community activists. Working in an interdisciplinary way, adds a level of depth to my learning that might be harder to achieve otherwise. It's been a great learning curve in that sense. I feel that I'm slowly developing skills in collaborating beyond social sciences that will be invaluable in my future career. As an early career researcher, I believe this is hugely important to learn the skills of cross-disciplinary communication. So yeah, it's a great way to sort of build up my skills whilst learning about knowledge beyond my immediate kind of training.
So I think for me, one of the most interesting aspects of doing an interdisciplinary project of this sort is the kind of conceptual challenges and development that a project like this allows you to get involved in. You're coming to a project or a shared topic or set of research questions from a number of different disciplines. And so that can be a really helpful and supportive thing to kind of develop your thinking as a group. But also I think it does raise some conceptual challenges for your particular discipline or for the point at which you're coming from, as it were. And that can also be, I think, a really positive thing, to have some of your own thinking or some of your own perspective challenged from a different discipline. I think that's a really positive aspect of interdisciplinary work, and it can help to develop your thinking around the topic, or it can introduce new ideas that perhaps you or your discipline hadn't formally thought about. So with air quality or the airspace project, for example, one of the things that has emerged so far is that some people are a little bit more focused perhaps on questions of place and atmosphere, particularly I think in relation to some of the community groups that we're working with. So the focus is not just, or shouldn't just be, on questions around pollution and air quality. It might be to do with environment, local environment, for example. It might be to do with how people feel about a place and how that relates to their sense of place, or the work they're doing perhaps with a local activist or community kind of group. I suppose the last point I would make is that also a project like this allows some kind of methodological development as well. So methods, for example, that you want to use in your project, think very carefully about how the different disciplines might have different methods, perspectives, or different ideas about methods that they can bring to a project. I think that kind of conversation as well, an exchange of ideas about methods, is also an exciting and really important part of a project like this.